This week on Quality Digest Live, we look at 6 truths
and 10 lies. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 30th, 2011. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm publisher Mike Richmond. Well, before we get started this week, I want to remind you all out there to please write us at qdl@qualitydigest.com. If you've seen anything on the show here today that you want to comment on, Dirk and I will do our best to get your comments on the show before we close.
And send them early.
Yeah, send them early, send them early.
It's a quick show.
You hear something that you want to get in on, write us right away, and Dirk will get it on his iPad and we'll get you on the show.
There you go.
Please do that. Anyway, so we start this week with a story about truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Oh, I like the truth.
Well, counterintuitive truth, but it's truth nonetheless. Trip Babbitt wrote a story for us in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily entitled 6 Counterintuitive Truths for Service, to Improve Service, And that again appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Trip had what you might call a flight to Budapest moment a few years back, not quite a road to Damascus moment, but similar in some way. He had a flight to Budapest where he was, at that point in his career, about 5 or 6 years ago, was contemplating W. Edwards Deming and the fact that some improvement initiatives he was trying to bring to the fore for service environments weren't really working that well, and he was wondering why. Well, he brought a book with him by a fellow by the name of John Seddon entitled Freedom from Command and Control is the name of the book. And again, this is a 2005 book by John Seddon. And from this book came what became known as the Vanguard method of quality improvement. And John Seddon and Tripp are both work on the Vanguard method. We should disclose that.
Yeah.
That this is a method that they work on. Well, again, Tripp came away from this book with some ideas, and those have crystallized in the article that he wrote earlier this week. And these 6 counterintuitive ideas, again, to help improve service. So I think we want to just run through them here on the screen share and show you what we're talking about and kind of chat a little bit about what each of these is. The first one is costs are in flow, not activity or scale. And really what he's talking about here is economies of scale versus economies of flow. And the example he uses is the post-World War II manufacturing environment where in the 40s and the 50s, the United States was obviously predominant with regard to their manufacturing base. The rest of the world, the developed world, pretty much had been leveled by the Second World War. So the U.S. could really bring to bear their strength in economies of scale to get a lot of manufacturing business and to pump out a lot of products. The Japanese, of course, being competitors to the U.S. in the manufacturing environment, couldn't do that same thing. They just didn't have, well, first of all, they didn't have the population base, they didn't have the space, the physical space, the capital structure available, and they just didn't have the finances to do that. So they had to look for a different way of doing it. Their idea was to bring economies of flow to the system. In other words, making it more efficient to manufacture. That's the way they were able to compete. So that's the first one that Tripp talks about. The second one is variation is in the system, not the people. And Tripp doesn't talk about this, but the example that came to my mind was Deming's red bead experiment.
Sure, absolutely.
Where you have blindfolded employees pick beads out of
scooping out beads out of that.
You'll get red or black, and depending on which one you get, you either did well or not. And basically the idea there is that the system, if the system itself doesn't work, if there's inherent variation in the system, it's not going to matter how good or how bad any individual employee is. You're not going to be able to tell anyway. Right. So look for those variations in the system, not in the people themselves. The third one is measures are derived from the work, not arbitrarily. And really here he's talking about financial measures. He's talking about the idea that in many organizations, what drives improvement are finances, the finance department, and the idea that we have to improve the bottom line, of course. But financial measures don't bring value to the customer, and all this is about bringing value to the customer. And if you don't bring value to the customer, those really are kind of wasteful processes to be striving to improve. The fourth one, again, if we turn to the screen share here, is change is emergent, not planned. In other words, the idea of planning itself is rather inefficient. You can't really, of course you have to have plans. You have to understand where you want to go, but if you're locked into the idea of planning, if you plan out this change without first embracing and understanding what your system is all about, in other words, let the system drive the change rather than let the planning drive the change, then you're not going to get where you want to go. The fifth one, design against demand, don't standardize. And this is where we really start getting into this idea of the difference between service organizations and manufacturing organizations. Standardization, of course, in manufacturing has always been taken as a good. I mean, you're dealing with products, not people. The end result is something that you're gonna produce. But the end result in a transactional environment, in a service environment, is people, exchanges with people.
Sure.
Standardizing that too much is going to lead to problems because individuals can't necessarily get what they want. Customers can't get what they want from systems that are designed that way. And the sixth and final one is understand and improve, then pull IT, not it. It's information technology.
Okay.
And this goes back to standardization, the idea of standardizing too much. If you try to create information technology systems and try to redesign those, especially things like websites or call center scripts, things like that, again, and if there's not a flexibility there and the people that are working within the system don't have the flexibility to adapt and have to stick very closely to a script, or in the instance of a website or a portal where users have to step through things without having the flexibility to get direct answers, that's a problem in a transactional service environment as well.
Right.
So again, my takeaway from this is this idea, again, the difference between manufacturing environments and service environments, where in service, you really need to have flow, and waste needs to be prevalent in your mind, as it does in manufacturing, but you can't really break out those systems into individual pieces. You have to look at them as a unified whole, that you're going to ultimately succeed or fail based on how you transact with your customer, how you interact with that person, because ultimately the product is the personal interaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with most of what Tripp says here, and in general I agree with the thrust of a lot of what Tripp writes about in most of his articles. However, I do think that he comes down a little bit too hard on standardization and things like Lean and Six Sigma. To me, he has got somewhat of a mindset that is based on what Six Sigma and Lean looked like back in the 80s, okay, which was very, kind of, particularly Six Sigma coming out of Motorola, was very manufacturing oriented, and probably the way it was practiced back in the 80s would not have worked in a transactional environment.
Doubtful.
But that's really changed, and I think the idea of, don't standardize, I think you have to, when you make a statement like that, you stand the chance of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because even in a transactional environment, whether it's banking or call centers or healthcare, education, whatever, there is a point where standardization does make sense. Now, when you get to the human interaction bit, when you get to the over-the-counter interactions or the call center on the phone interactions, yeah, that can't be too standardized, because you need to allow flexibility for the give and take of a customer interaction.
Well, I think that's what Tripp's saying here, is that he's saying that you can take this too far in a transactional environment. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You need to adapt that. And to be fair, and let's be honest here, there's been a lot of pushback on this. We've had debate on our site whenever we've run Tripp's articles. Many times we get debate. Or Tripp comments many times on articles that we run as well. So there's other ways of looking at this. Now, you brought up healthcare before. Healthcare is an environment that we personally have seen a great amount of improvement through using Lean and Six Sigma in particular as methodology.
Yeah, there's a lot of success stories out there. A lot of work being done with Lean and Six Sigma in healthcare environment.
Probably more in those spaces really than anywhere else right now.
In terms of growth,
In terms of growth, in terms of who is getting involved in these systems. If you go and you see any of the Lean or Six Sigma conferences that are out there, you'll see a lot of presentations from healthcare organizations. So I think that I agree with you. I think that you need to take from that what's valuable. And you need to not discount the fact that there is some value in standardization. There's some value in looking at a transactional service environment and say, okay, there are things here we can standardize. There are ways we can streamline, we can improve, and yet maintain the flexibility, which is what Tripp is saying, that enable you to still serve customers and keep that as your primary.
And I would add to this whole argument, Trip is coming from a specific viewpoint.
Sure.
Vanguard is a company that is their product is a systems thinking approach to problem solving.
Right.
And we have other consultants out there whose product is Lean or Six Sigma.
Absolutely.
Quality Circles, TQM, they're still
Absolutely.
out there. As a consumer, what we have to be taking from these articles and from what these guys have to say is not that they're, oh, this guy is wrong and this guy is right. It's like, what tool makes sense for your particular environment?
Well, and it's an ongoing debate that we have here as a media company as well. As a media company, you want to be fair, you want to be balanced, you want to present different ideas and that marketplace of ideas out there for the user. But ultimately, the user has to decide. I mean, certainly people are going to tend to want to come down wholeheartedly on one side or the other, especially if you're working for an organization that's offering services. You're going to want to be very declarative about the fact that this works, that doesn't work, embrace this certain philosophy. Well, I think we encourage, all of us here at Quality Digest, encourage you, the user, to look at those different solutions and look at them with a discerning eye and pick and choose the things that work for you. Our job, we feel, is to present these ideas and to encourage debate. Right. On our site and QDD and on QDL, the show, and on our website too.
Yep.
So that's what it's all about. So from lies, or from truths, I should say.
Well, we had a question come in.
Oh, we did.
We did. Max wants to know where you can buy shirts like ours.
Really? Like these two? that shirt really?
Ross dress for less, baby.
I was going to say mine is made warehouse, I think, but excellent. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Max.
That's a great question. Yeah, just keep them coming, guys.
I would say the more questions we get like that.
It's a slow day there in Seattle. That's all I can say.
Well, all right. Well, let's plunge forward from truth. We're going to go to lies. And now I noticed that I had 6 truths. You have 10 lies.
Well, that's because
so you're 4 ahead of me.
Well, it's a lot easier to tell a lie than it is to tell the truth. So I think that's probably the reason.
That could be.
This article is from Mark Hamill, one of our common. Actually, he's a blogger, and he lets us borrow from his blog quite frequently.
Gem the Tales.
And we're also going to be having Mark on the show, hopefully sometime in October, to talk about his ideas and also a new book. So keep your eyes open for that.
Yep.
His article is 10 Common Lean Lies. And what he's talking about in here is how there are statements that will be made within our Lean or Six Sigma, or name your management process of the day, that undermine credibility and competency. In other words, what he's saying is there are certain comments or genres of comments that really give lie to the idea that you are practicing Lean or you're practicing Six Sigma. And either management is trying to pull the wool over your eyes, or the workers themselves are trying to pull the wool over management's eyes. And these are just, we're just going to run through these because actually these are things you're all going to recognize. And to me, it's actually a hilarious column. Okay, we're just going to run through these real quick. This situation is totally abnormal. I've never seen this before.
That's right.
Yeah.
Abnormality is normal.
Abnormality is normal. Yeah. We got a problem. Wow. I've just never encountered this before. We'll look into it. Yeah, it's the same thing that's been happening for the last year and a half. But okay.
So I say it's normal.
We will dedicate resources to the Kaizen promotion office.
Yes. Maybe.
Yeah. We're 100% behind you, and we'll get on that.
50% of the time.
I love this one. We were Lean years ago. Then we experienced some turnover in key positions. And, actually, this one is not so funny because this one actually is a common problem.
Yeah.
And the problem is that given the best intentions, if you don't set aside time and energy to train everybody in what you're doing, whether it's Lean or Six Sigma or TQM or whatever, if you don't train everybody in that, when you have turnover, some of your key people who hold all this knowledge of the processes and procedures and what you're doing, they're gone, and sure, your Lean program is going to go down the dumps.
Who are your stakeholders? I mean, you have to know who those are and spread it out as much as you can.
Exactly, and that includes if there's management support and that management person goes away, well, who's taking the reins? If you've got a lead person on the floor who's kind of, the rah-rah person and the cheerleader for whatever that quality management process is, and they go away, well, who's stepping in to take their place?
Very important.
I'll be there for the entire Kaizen event.
That's right. Unless my kid has a ball game. Or
yeah.
There's a sales meeting.
I've got dinner with my wife, or I've got to wash my cat, or something. Yeah,
these are important things that do happen. I mean,
and this actually, I will say that part of this excuse, I'll be there for the entire Kaizen event, where they have no plan for showing up at all, really comes about, I think, for a lack of generating excitement and knowledge for what the Kaizen event is supposed to do. I think if everybody really understood what these events meant and what it could mean for them, and even just making them fun, that people would participate. But if it's just another, oh my gosh, we're just going to be running around, cleaning up, blah, blah, blah. Sure, why? We did that last month and it didn't do any good. Why are they going to show up, right? Yeah, I'll be there for the entire event. Yeah, sure. I'm going to be sick that day. I have a lot of lean experience.
Do you?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. We applied the proper rigor. This usually comes about when, as an excuse. Well, we had this event, or we were implementing this project, and we applied the proper amount of rigor for it. I don't know why it didn't work out. The situation is totally abnormal. I've never seen this before.
And it might be because somebody was watching their cat. Who knows? But
exactly. Our employees are our most important asset.
Sure.
Yeah. Senior leadership is committed to lean. This is another keen one. And actually, we'll have an email related to this later. Senior leadership is committed to lean. Well, whenever you hear this experience, whenever you hear that,
usually it is 100% committed.
Yes, usually 100% committed,
yes, right.
And usually it comes just before the rug is pulled out from underneath the whole Lean and Six Sigma implementation.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah, they're committed to it unless it's taking a little bit too much time, or gosh, we're going to have to dump some training money into this, and then all of a sudden the commitment is just kind of like not there.
100% committed as much as possible.
As much as possible, yeah.
Right.
We will practice line stop judoka, but whatever you do, don't pull that cord. You did what?
Yeah,
you stopped the line?
Are you crazy?
Are you crazy? Everyone was fully trained in
everything.
In everything.
And nothing.
And nothing.
At the same time.
The whole training thing, this comes back to, we were lean years ago, then we experienced some turnover. A lot of these are interrelated. And what they really point to is when you hear these, what really are excuses, it's because there really has been a lack of proper management support, number one. Or even if management is supported, there's been a lack of proper training and implementation on the floor so that people know where to go with all this, right? They know what to do with the tools that they're being given. They know how to implement it, and there's somebody behind them supporting them. And frankly, I think you always need a cheerleader. I think you need a cheerleader. This isn't always possible, but I swear every company has one. There's almost always somebody on the shop floor who's willing to get behind a project. It's like, oh wow, this is good. We're really going to make that person an important part of the implementation of your project.
Of your program. And we're laughing about these, and they are for a certain perspective.
Because we all seen them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're involved in one of these situations, it's really not such a laughing matter.
Yeah.
I mean, you do really want to improve the organization, and you're being stopped because of these things.
Okay, well, within minutes, I'm not kidding, within minutes of us publishing the story, we got a couple comments. The first one, I think...
I love this one.
I think one of the strangest things I've encountered is when people think they will embark on a continuous improvement initiative, be it lean or whatever the process they engage in, and they ask, how long will this take?
What about the word continuous didn't you understand?
It's continuous, so it's going to take, I don't know, probably, I don't know, a long time. Well, it's going to keep going. It's continuous.
When you get that question, though, in your mind, you're thinking, well, it's going to be continuous for at least a week.
Yeah.
At least another week.
Yeah, at least another week, yeah. Okay, this one is a little bit more serious. To me, there is nothing more wasteful than pretend lean. And really, this really is the thrust of Mark's column.
Sure.
Is everything he's talking about really boils down to a pretend lean, where everything is being given lip service, whether it's from management or from the shop floor. Nobody is really invested in implementing a lean or Six Sigma program. Yeah, and so they're just giving it lip service.
Yep.
To me, there's nothing more wasteful than pretend lean. I have seen far too many lean event report outs where we are given a glowing report of the time saved, the steps saved, and afterward, I find out the work activity is still there. It was just moved to another area that was not part of the event.
Gee, we've seen that happen.
We've seen that happen. It's like, yeah, we're going to clean up this area, or either physically clean it up, or we're going to take some of that, we're going to streamline some of the work. And they don't really streamline the work. They just hand the job over to somebody else in another department. Right. Now this department, wow, man, we're running a lot faster. Sure, but you just added 20% more time to, some poor schlub over the next department who's now just added that to his plate, right?
Well, what's going to happen is that poor schlub's going to have their own lean, lean
yeah, they're going to pass
it right back.
Okay, interesting, true story on this. Ryan Day, one of our webmaster and a frequent contributor, was telling me he used to work for a company that built RVs, and they had gone through Kaizen events and cleaning up their areas and kind of supposedly an ongoing thing. They had a group of Japanese businessmen come in for an unrelated purpose, but obviously these Japanese businessmen were very familiar with the 5 S's and Kaizen and so forth, and they started laughing as they were walking around the plant and kind of noticing what was going on. And so somebody asked them, well, what are you laughing at? And they pointed out that the way you guys clean up is, you're taking a blower, we all have either shop blowers, right? And you're blowing all the dust off of your surfaces and onto the floor, and then you're blowing it off to the corners of the building. Where is your actual cleanup coming in? Nobody's picking it up. They're just blowing it off into another part of the facility.
Well,
right?
it's a shame that facility didn't have some large rugs.
Then they could just then the Japanese, they never would have seen it. Just would have been
swept under the rug.
Okay. Funny stuff.
It's funny. It's funny, but it's sad because it's true in many instances, and we've all seen these things.
Yeah. Okay.
Good story.
So we're all about lies and truths, and that was kind of a fun week.
Yeah. No, it was good. I think both those stories and the interactivity or the interrelation between them. What is a lie, what is a truth, and the subtleties of those. Again, they're humorous, but the humor comes with a little
there's always
pain as well.
One thing we know about humor is something is funny only when there is truth in it.
Truth in it, somewhere.
Yeah, if there's truth in it, that's what makes it funny, because everybody recognizes what's going on with it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So thank you, Mark, and of course thank you, Trip, for those 2 great articles.
Yep.
Well, before we close today, I want to circle back around on our Eye On segment, which we cover, as you know, here on QDL every once in a while. And Eye On are things that we keep our eye on, that we're looking at, that we're thinking about, that we've seen kind of filter in here to the office, to our editorial department, and that we want to present to you, and things that we'll continue to circle back around on. This Eye On this week is going to talk about surveys and studies, and there's one that we're going to be publishing next week in Quality Digest Daily from the Alex Group, or Alex Partners, I believe it is. Alex Partners, and they interviewed senior executives to find out about the effectiveness of lean. And they found some very interesting things, some very interesting divergences between perception and reality amongst these top leaders about what they thought about lean, how effective it really was, and what their commitment level really was to it. And one of the interesting things about it was they found in many cases that the commitment to it was much higher than the proven results. So again, it's lie, truth, where it's in there somewhere, but it's interesting. And this is really survey season, and this is one that we're going to present to you next week, but we're in the time of the year, usually when we get into the 4th quarter, where we see a lot of these surveys come out. Surveys are great. You out there seem to love them. We get a lot of reads on surveys and comments on surveys that we run. Some of the statisticians love surveys because they sometimes
love to pick them apart. Why the surveys are completely bogus.
And that's great too, because it's
so good. We'll be hearing from Davis Balistracci.
We'll be hearing from Davis, I'm sure, and some of our other friends in the statistical world. But that's all good. And again, look out for that here in the coming weeks. Definitely next week we'll have this one from Alex Partners. And comment. Let us know what you think about these surveys and what you think that they mean, because that's part of what we do, is the interpretation between ourselves and our users as well. So look out for that.
Also coming up, we're going to start a whole series of either Skype or phone interviews with kind of the movers and shakers in our industry. So coming up next week, actually, we're going to have Jim Harrington. A lot of you are familiar with Jim Harrington, a very well-known quality guru who's been around for a long time.
Written for us for a lot of years.
Written for us for a lot of years. And he's going to be coming on and talking about an article that's going to appear next week about what's going on in China. both in terms of quality and kind of the standard of living and wages and so forth that are happening because of the big growth going on in China right now, and what the implications of that mean for the rest of the world. Also, we'll be having in a couple weeks, the 21st, I believe, October 21st, Subir Chowdhury is going to be in talking about his new book,
which is The Power of Leo.
The Power of Leo. Listen, enrich, and optimize. So we look forward to having Subir on. And also, we're going to have Keith Bevins of the National Physical Laboratory in the UK, who's going to be talking about the measurement behavior study that was recently done at the Coordinate Metrology Systems Conference in Phoenix.
We were there, and that was a really interesting survey we took a look at, and we talked about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more in depth, but basically what it comes down to is because of a lack of proper training, people are doing very precise measurements on large-scale devices, and sometimes small-scale devices, without the proper training, and their measurements are wrong.
Yeah,
their measurements are bad.
Yeah.
And this whole study was to kind of point out where these problems are, and we'll get into that more in depth when we talk to Keith.
And the need, and really the need, ultimately, what this is pointing towards is the need for some standardization.
Within the metrology industry,
within that. So we talked about that, and we'll talk about it some more. So great, well, thanks, Dirk. That is our show for this week, for Friday the 30th, and we'll be back at him next week here on October 3rd, I guess that is. We'll have another great week, another great month of content coming up. We're excited about getting into the fourth quarter here.
Yeah, and be sure to join us next week because we have Jim Harrington, so invite your friends.
Yes, please come aboard. All right, well, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
So long.
Thank you.